Uja, everyone. Peace and blessings. Hatep. Do it for being here. Let's just take a moment and take a deep breath together. An Amun breath, that sweet peace, Hatep that's in the breath. Take a few according to your body's needs. Feel the sweetness that is Amun in every breath. So give me a moment. So welcome to today, March 31st, 2024, which is the part 2 of what I call the per Shaka Netter, because really any per is included in that. And per refers to abode, per refers to building, per refers to use sometimes the house, and also it has the capacity to use in the capacity of temple. So it has all of those as different meanings. And per Shaka Netter refers to the abode of the hidden divinity, which is not a physical location, but in the very essence of each of us. Really, there's not many essences of everyone. There's only one essence, and that essence is the per Chetaneter, the per Nebager, per Amun, per Heru. So this is part 2 with Sibama myself, and I really wanted to have this part 2 to give a conclusion to the presentation by Sibama. Especially there was a part there that I actually shared with you that you were going to see last 2 weeks ago, the first presentation, but I realized it was not in the first part that I had shown. So I wanted to do that. I won't have the capacity today to show the full presentation, but upon request, we can schedule another time to show it. And actually, as a matter of fact, I am most probably, the announcements will go out when it's definite, but I likely in the future, but just not sure it's going to start next month or the month after, probably the next month after, start a Book of the Dead series. And this presentation from Sibama is like number 4 in that series. So a Book in the Dead review, deeper dive review and unpacking all that's in the presentations that Sibama has shown. And those presentations are available. Well, they are not available in Kemetic. Last time I told you could actually see this presentation in Kemetic. This series of presentations is not in Kemetic, but after Sebai Dja goes through doing the reviews with it, then the review as well as the original presentations will be placed on Kemetic, is the current plan. Subject to change, but that's the current plan. So let's go ahead and start to open up ourselves, or the very essence of who we are. With the Hetepti in your sacred spaces, you can repeat. I'll do it twice, and as you are repeating with me, that makes the fourfold. And as there are many of us, it is that kind of idea of infinite. Hetepti nesunetera ampu webwat nepta jasir perkeru kakaaped sineterari makeru. And you can chant along with me. So Hetepti nesunetera ampu webwat nepta jasir perkeru kakaaped sineterari makeru. So I've asked Uabamunti to sort of give us a brief overview of her impressions of part 1. So Uabamunti, I will stop sharing my screens. If you're able to share your camera, that would be helpful. If you're all set up, I'm not sure. But
Uja, are you able to hear me?
Nee.
Okay, good. So, Dua everyone, Dua Sebai, Dua Sebai Dja. Perhaps we may see Sebai today. But last week, Sebai Dja really did a very powerful introduction to the whole concept around embracing the the dynamic aspect of the supreme being manifesting through all the Netarus. And she focused on the nuke. She didn't focus, but she brought that forward as the nuke, I am. And so Nebuchadnezzar, nuke Ra, nuke Heru. And she showed the correlation between the two, which was a great entry into the teaching of what Sebai shared in his lecture from the Henotheistic papyrus. And of course, Sebai does what he does so well, which gave a wonderful explanation about the most devotional and the mystical aspect of Amun and Ra. So he brought together Amun Ra and also with the foundation of Ma'at and how all of that comes together and reveal the hidden aspect and the visible aspect of the divine. He went on in his lecture indicating that things looked as a double, but it's really only one. And that really helps you understand the power behind the concept of Amun Ra. Amun Ra and Nebuchadnezzar. So one of the things that he highlighted in the scripture is something that was the takeaway that we all should do is about we need to read the scripture because the scripture gives us this is how you understand the divine. This is how you interpret the divine. And so you repeat the scripture. And the more you repeat the scripture, the scripture becomes part of you. And so you're going through the scripture and also you're repeating the name of Amun Ra and just keep saying that Hakau, Amun Ra, Amun Ra, Amun Ra. By reading the scripture, you get certain proper understanding about who Amun Ra was. And in those 17 verses that he gave to us, there was a lot of meat in there. So if you didn't read it, you need to go and read it because it was a lot of jewels in those scriptures. And I'll finish up with, he gave a wonderful presentation about the many cycles of creation that have come forth. And we don't necessarily know how many cycles that we've been in through, going through this process of enlightenment, but there's been over 1,000 trillions cycles, and he went through a detailed explanation of that. So it's 1 billion of journeys. But more importantly, the focus for the Amun and for Heru and for all of us is that what does it mean to be in Amun consciousness, and that once you understand what it means to be in Amun consciousness, then you can perform all of your tasks, all of your daily activities with Hetapu, which is a sustained state of peacefulness, abiding peace. And with that, I'll close with a brief summary of what was in the lecture presented by Sebai. So Dua, Sebai, and Dua Dja, and this lecture came from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the hieroglyph translation, using the Trilinear method, and that's volume 1. You'll find this, I think it's on page 81. So if you don't have this book, get this book and enjoy. Again, I'll turn it back over to Sebai Dja. Dua Sebai and Dua Sebai Dja. Hotep. Yeah. And Dua Amun. We bow in adorations to you. Hotep.
Uja Sebai, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if anyone else can. Hatap.
I still see I corrected everything, but I did not correct. I pulled a slide up here, which is one of the ones I didn't correct. It says pantheism. And instead of pantheism. Any volunteers out there to say what the difference is between pantheism? Briefly, very briefly, you have like 1 second. What the difference is between pantheism and panentheism? You can welcome to type it in the chat because I won't be able to kind of see you unless I go to the other computer, which is challenging. So if you're aware, you can type it in the chat. So pantheism, as we do have that in our tradition, that's acknowledging that the essence of everything is Amun Ra, is Nebuchadnezzar, whatever tutelary divinity is your high divinity, really meaning the one creator spirit being. And this is all creator spirit being stuff, because in our scriptures, it's Ra says, Amun Ra, Ra says creation comes forth from the very being of him, her. And so everything is raw stuff. So as you look around, you're seeing objects, but the essence of those objects are consciousness, spirit consciousness. And so that's pantheism. It's recognizing that divinity consciousness is in everything. And our tradition have another level to that, which although we acknowledge that, we also acknowledge that the one supreme essence that we refer to as Nebuchadnezzar, that, in any of the traditions, each of the Neteru divinity in their specific tradition, they are equated with Nebuchadnezzar. So it's Asar Nebuchadnezzar in the Sarian tradition, is Ptah Nebuchadnezzar in that tradition, or Nebuchadnezzar Ptah, whichever, Aset or Heteru, Anet, whomever it is, they are in their tradition one with Nebuchadnezzar, the essence of Nebuchadnezzar. So our tradition says this highest essence, the only real essence that we are, is transcendental. It transcends all of this stuff here, the physical stuff that we see. It is transcended in the highest consciousness, because in the highest consciousness, there is only one divinity. That's also known as Paneter Nebuchadnezzar. And so there's that transcendental component that goes into the Shetaneter spiritual teachings. And it's henotheistic because we acknowledge that there's only one. So, but we're not monotheistic because we understand that this one expresses through many different facets in the time and space reality, from the most Sebamashos in the Tree of Life, from the very subtle to very gross. Not gross meaning, oh, that's gross. That is Western community, but gross in terms of to get in more and more like physical grounding. And so that was one main concept. And so the idea of nuke is the nuke I am really refers to this Nebuchadnezzar one essence. But we can also nuke to any of the Neteru, because the Neteru are one and the same. If we understand in the highest sense, if we truly understand the highest aspect of the teaching, there's no contradiction. So we say Nuke Asar, and we say Nuke Amun Ra, Nuke Heru, Nuke Aset, Nuke Net. In the highest sense, we're nuking Nebuchadnezzar, and that is transcendent beyond in time and space. It cannot even be nuked in a mental way, but that's the highest point that our minds can go to. That's the point of the pyramid from which then we can transcend, is that pivot point, is that nuke. And so we talked about how really we're all one Neteru family, and that's elaborated by Wabamunti. So embracing the dynamic henotheistic panentheism of our Kemetic spiritual mystical religion, this scripture then is for everyone. It's for every per Shetau Neter abiding in the innermost recesses of everybody's hearts. So, I thank you to all of you who shared with me last week a few words that impacted you from the scripture. So this is called like word art, word clouds. And this is the one I chose to kind of represent because we all came together, right, to make, to sculpt. And that process of within our hearts, within the deepest recesses of our hearts, where Amun is, where Amun Nebuchadnezzar is, where Heru Nebuchadnezzar is. And these were the words that we surrounded and that essence with, that allowed our minds to be filled with and impact the very sense of how we felt and what we took away from the teachings. So the nuke, waters, quadrillion, word, full, unut, nuke correctly, uashu, worship were some of the words you all shared. And so I like this image of menking our hearts every day with Amun Ra. And this was the part, the imagery that I wanted Sibama to go into in his talk that he did not go into in the first part. So it's in the second part. And so we're going to go there. And that's the idea here again. It's going to share with us that whether depicted as a hawk head or a ram head, Amun Ra is a moon, one and the same. And we know Heru is Ra. I didn't put that into my mystic Ma'at formulations today just because of time, but so let's go there. I think we're going to start. So there's still part of this presentation that's question and answers and things like that. That's not going to be able to see today. But I said it will be coming up in the Book of the Dead reviews starting in a couple months. And then there'll be also in Kemetic TV as well. That's it. And again, I will do a hard, quote unquote, a hard stop. I'll try to do a hard stop, but allow enough time at the end for who have said to say a few closing words. And to end by 2:30 is the goal. 2:35 latest. What's up?
I wasn't really going to go there because we're kind of at the end of the time. But this, I put this right after the hymn to Amun Ra that we just went over. This is not this particular painting. This is a kind of painting just to introduce you to what it is. This is from the scripture that is inscribed as the paintings on the tomb of Queen Nefertari. And when we went to Egypt, I asked about this, and we are not able to go because they said it was closed, and there were many things that were closed for some reason, and they never gave an explanation why. This is probably the most beautiful, most well-preserved. I think they almost completely restored it. Tomb. And this is a tomb of Nefertari. This is her name. It says, Meduje in Asar, Suhemet Urt, Mut, Nefertari Mary Mut. So these words are spoken by the Osiris, the queen, the one who is beautiful and beloved of Goddess Mut. What happened? Okay, here. This painting, some of you might have seen this before. It's one of the most important teachings about Amun Ra. And before we get to that, let's do Amunti's question. Do another question, revolving path. It relates to both Ra rising and setting, and Ra revolving in the universe. That's correct. So the movement of Ra through creation is seen as a revolution. Revolutions are revolving movements. So one revolution is one day. Ra emerges at dawn, goes up to noon, and then sets in the evening. Comes back in the morning again. That's one revolution. In this context, Ra, the scripture is also alluding to the fact that Amun Ra is moving throughout creation, throughout all the lands of all the world and all creation. Okay? So this painting from the tomb of I have a more detailed translation of it. We'll just go quickly because we're out of time. Basically, this image here in the center, this is like a caduceus. And you have Goddess Nebuchadnezzar on the left, Goddess Aset on the right. They are attending to the mummy statue of Amun Ra. As these two lines of scripture. The other ones are discussed in the book. I'm just giving you these for now. This one up here says Ra. This is Ra. And you have the ram with the horizontal horns and the sun disk. So it's alluding to Amun. So we have Amun and Ra together. Now these scriptures are giving us an insight into who Amun Ra is, essentially. And what it says is that Ra, Hu, Hetep, M, Asar. So when this Ra is in peace as Asar, on the other side, it says Asad, Hetep, M, Ra. So when Asar is in peace in Ra, and when Ra is in peace in Asar, they both come together and they manifest as Amun Ra. So this image, this image has the complete teaching of the Kemetic. In a way, it's sort of as a hologram. The duality of Aset and Nebuchadnezzar. Aset relates to what is higher, and Nebuchadnezzar relates to what is lower, the time and space. And Aset relates to wisdom and to the higher consciousness. Asar is the soul. Ra is mind in this context. When these things come together, when the witnessing consciousness all come together, they're all together as Amun Ra. And time and space and consciousness, that's it, attend on that spirit, on that unified transcendental being. So this image at once brings in all of the teachings of all of the main three traditions, the Anunian tradition, the Wasedian tradition, the Theban tradition, the Menefer tradition, the Memphite theology. They're all coming together into this total, all-encompassing conception, shall we say, of Amun Ra. Okay, Sarmutit says, as a follow-up to her question, do another question, revolving path, it relates to both Ra rising and setting and Ra revolving in the universe. But it is the Earth that is revolving around Ra. Right, we're not looking at this scientifically. We're looking at this mythically. So forget about Kepler and Galileo and all, and we're talking about the context of human existence on Earth as witness, not about what's going on astronomically or anything like that. So yeah, this is mythic talk we're dealing with right now. Okay, you're giving me a lot of static. I'm not hearing static right now. I guess try to maybe it's here. Okay. So try to mute yourself if you're not actively speaking. Okay, did that kind of explain your point, or you still have a question about that issue? Sorry, Munti. Do you hear the noise now? So I'm not moving. Okay, well, anyway, if there are no further questions, we can go ahead and conclude there. Okay, you're following up. Uja, the explanation, the Kemet were very scientific people. Right, so that's true, and from a one aspect what I was giving there about the billions and trillions revolution, that itself transcends actually the science even up to the 20th century, when it was realized that the universe is billions, hundreds of billions years old. So and they say that it's 14 billion, but there could be other universes. There could have been a universe before this one. This one can give rise to another one, like I was explaining at the conference. So, but that's not really what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with a scientific study of how the Earth revolves around. Because if you want to look at it that way, you could say that the Earth is revolving around the sun for trillions of times, for billions of years. So you can turn it around. So we're not really talking scientifically. We're talking, science. Obviously, we'd have a different context, but we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with, so we're not concentrating on the items of time and space. We're concentrating on the idea of the past, present, future, and eternity, distinct reality. That's what we're really trying to concentrate on. Because otherwise, if we see, this is what it means to be an initiate. It means to start transcending the mundane interpretation, the time and space, and move into a kind of philosophical, scroll-like, abstract mentation process where you're using time and space as a springboard to jump into a higher reality. Otherwise, you just end up in time and space, and you'll end up in your human body, and with some idea of God as a reality someplace else, but you won't be able to realize it because you're still holding yourself to time and space references, time and space context. So the issue of Earth revolving on the sun. So if you want, you can use the same numbers to say the same thing. It's basically what I was saying before. It doesn't matter. Uja, the explanation of this painting brings me to verse 13. what is meant by Asar being overseer of buildings? Is this when the soul's at peace in Ra, as you just explained, and Ra is in peace in Asar? In verse 13, the overseer of buildings. We're talking about Asar Hunefer, and that should be clear for you. Basically, that part of the verse is alluding to the role that Hunefer played when he was living on Earth. That was his job. He was an overseer, an inspector of the buildings of the king. So that we should not mix those two contexts. That's Asar Hunefer versus Asar, the divine self. Okay? So what this painting of the tomb is alluding to Asar, the supreme being, and Ra, the supreme being, all coming together into Amun, the supreme being, all one. Then you have a question?
Sabama, on the question, I think Priestess Amunti asked in terms of the revolution of the earth around the sun or whatsoever that may be.
Wait, speak up a little bit, I can't hear you.
I said a question that Priestess Amunti asked on the revolution of the earth around the sun. Isn't that one of the same conflict? And you say it, you're not speaking in terms of time. But isn't our practice, yoga practice, also a science? And it's one of the same problem they had, as you just allude to with Galileo and all those, how they call them, Anoxiphan and all of them, desecrating a lot of these Roman and Greek philosophers, using what is considered to be the same physical science in order to rip nature apart for the advancement of what they call the human mind, and looking at what we call spirituality as a science, as something that doesn't really exist. So my question is, isn't our practice as a spiritualist in this sense also is a science?
It's a science, but it's not to be confused with the practice of mythic wisdom. And this is one of the teachings it's part of the level 2 practice, where if we're talking about from a mythic standpoint, that Ra is revolving around the earth. That is a mythic idea. It's not a scientific idea. So science, and you don't have to have science in your myth in order for it to be effective, in order for it to lead to a higher, because myth is, the purpose of it is to develop devotion and to develop a glorious feeling towards the divine. And so in mythic science, we don't have to say scientifically, I'm sitting here, and the cushion I'm sitting on has to have a certain tension, a certain scientifically determined level of tension, of also elasticity, and also we have to have a specific temperature when we do that with a cushion, and it has to be made up of a certain material, and we have to have that scientifically tested. We also have to have an assay, which means we have to have take a sample of it. We have to send it to a laboratory, and we have to see what elements are in there. And you see, I can go on ad infinitum, because then you have what exact food do you eat before you came. If you have a food offering, we have to scientifically take a sample of it and send it for testing and make sure that it doesn't have any exact impurities. You follow what I'm getting at?
Yeah, quite understanding. I'm agreeing with you along the line because
See, that's the problem. A mythic reference, which that is trying to. Remember what I said, that this scripture is a devotional as well as a mystic scripture. And when you're trying to get to devotion, mysticism, you're not going to hold yourself with ideas of time and space. And so what I'm getting at is a very good question, because what I'm getting at is that this actually is a scientific process, what I'm talking about. If you make some tea and you want to come and sit down and enjoy your tea and do meditation, how do you know that that tea is not going to have something that's going to agitate your stomach? That you ate something before and there's something sitting in your stomach, some chemical residue that the tea is going to cause you to get sick, or you have to do testing of all those things scientifically, or you have to, by trial and error, scientifically do it over many times to see and make sure that everything's going to be okay. Now, if you do all these things in a devotional manner, meaning that it doesn't matter exactly what tea you have, it doesn't matter so much what you ate. What is really most important is the devotion, the turning towards the divine, opening your heart towards the divine in a loving way, and doing the Amun Ra chant of the divine name with feeling, with devotion. These are the important aspects. Turning towards the east in the morning to see, we know that Ra does not rise, but we're saying that from a devotional perspective. You follow?
yes.
Because Ra is the spirit that we are devoting ourselves to, and that we are lauding, that we are praising. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a mythic way of looking at it as opposed to a scientific. And of course, it's different from the way that the church looked at it, which is the idea that we are the center. And you can see the difference. Because if Kemetic was looking at this in that way, then the ancient Kemites would have gone trying to destroy scientists, which we know that they did not do, like the church did. Anyone who said that the earth was revolving on the sun had to be killed. That never happened. In the temple, the mythic wisdom does not necessarily have to do with the science of physical objects. What I'm trying to get to is that the scientific development is the scientific creation and development and increase of devotion. That is a scientific process. And scientific aspect of that is that if you do these devotions, chant his name, do the turning towards the sun in the east in the morning, and saying, "Glory be to you, Amun Ra," as you rise, and becoming larger and stronger. Scientific way, your devotion grows. That's the science of that. Follow?
So then I quite agree with you, because I'm looking at it here, and I'm kind of amusing in the sense, and I'm saying along the line here, if, as I said, it's a science in the sense, and you're explaining the science in the sense, the scientific base based upon the spirituality in the sense, and I'm saying the lab or the laboratory for practicing is the mind. That's where the science is, and not the physical thing, dissecting this and dissecting that and looking at that.
Right. So the scientific aspect has more of importance and reference in relation to physical objects and the physical world. It has its place, even though it has limits. In the mythic study, which occurs in the astral plane, it is higher process. That has a operating under a different context. So if you're doing physical devotion with physical objects, then obviously science is important. For instance, Sage of Amun said that there are 3 levels of worship. One is the physical, one is the astral, one is the causal. With the physical, you use physical objects. You use physical incense, physical food offerings, physical water to be libations, whatever. Let's say that if you do not apply physical science to that physical worship, you do it incorrectly, it can blow up on you.
Yeah.
So let's say that the scripture calls for libation into a fire. And you take gasoline and you make a libation. What's going to happen? So science comes in to that process. But if you put a flammable object into a fire in your mind, like say the life force of the serpent power, then what can happen there? And is that going to be a negative or a positive?
Yeah.
So just want to give you an idea to the world time space has its laws and has its reality, and even Einstein talked about how even those laws are bendable. Even those laws have limits. And I talked about this at the conference where in the black hole, the laws of physics don't apply. But black holes exist in time and space, don't they? Apparently, they also exist outside of time and space too. So you try to apply your Newtonian physics in a black hole and see what happens. It's going to backfire. So in this analogy, the black hole is that which transcends. So we can say, from a physical perspective, that black holes operate in time and space, that we can see them floating around in space at the center of the galaxy and different things like that. What if I was to say to you that this universe, the time and space that we see, is an emanation of those black holes, and the black holes are actually entry points into a transcendental reality that is actually the true reality. And so what we're experiencing here is actually something, as we said before, a out-of-body experience, or out of that eternity. So therefore it means that the science of the world of time and space is actually a relative reality, just like everything else in time and space. So we can't ascribe absolute importance to the laws of science in time and space. From my perspective, the devotional aspect of the scripture, of the teaching, is higher than time and space, higher than the science of time and space, if that path is being cultivated.
So it breaks back down to, let me say, the 4 truths as the code that gives you, that puts you into that, beyond that question of what we call physical science or anything like that.
Right, it's transcending. And that's what the scripture is alluding to anyway. When it says that Amun Ra is doing this, we're moving away from this idea of physicality as being immutable, as being abiding. This is a momentary deviation and has no abiding nature to it. And so that means that everything in it is also illusory. Our relationships, our things that we think are so important in time and space, our children, our job, our very lives, all this is illusory. And what it means illusory, it means that it is not an abiding reality. It is a momentary deviation from absolute truth. And if you hold on to that as if it were abiding, as it is true, then you can never let go of
it. Quite agree. I want to ask one more question. I don't know if this may be maybe a part of it, or if it may be outside of it. On the question of this picture that you have here with Amun and Offset and Nebjet, where they're adoring
Right, they're adoring Amun Ra.
Yeah, and I'm looking at here and I'm asking myself, is there any real significance, which I believe I'm not knowing, but I'm just asking, I only believe this. I'm only looking at Offset, and they both have a hand in that, the right hand, I think, is in the Dua position, but the left hand, they have it down. Is there any real significance?
Right. Uh-huh.
Huh?
Yeah, finish what you're saying.
I said, I'm looking at Offset here, and that's that in the back of his head. But the two hands, the left hand is hanging down. Both hand is hanging down by going down to his knees down there. And the way the hands are situated, are there any real significance in that?
Right. This is a posture of attending or attendance. And you see this in the Heru scriptures, where you see the divinities are attending to and supporting a mummy. And this is a mummy. The mummy aspect is Asar. And of course, he has the sash of eternity. He has the standing on the pedestal of Ma'at, and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
So this is a posture of attendance. It is actually not a posture of embrace. It is not a posture of adoration of dua. It is a posture of attendance. It means that it's supporting, it is attending to, it's fixing up the mummy who is made to stand erect, as opposed to lying horizontal. The horizontal means death, and the vertical means life. So it means essentially that time and space are attending on the spirit, which is transcendental. And usually you see these images, they're turning towards a set because they're turning towards what is higher. Higher from the standpoint of not that Nebuchadnezzar is lower or bad, is that they're pointing towards what is the higher truth. Right. I think my camera is not working anymore for some reason. Okay, so there's maybe a signal that we better quit while we're ahead. If there are any more questions.
All right, well, thank you very much, Sebama, Dua, for all that teaching that you have given me here this evening, Dua.
Yeah, very well. Oh, Amun Ra.
Oh, Amun Ra.
Om Amun Ra Pata.
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 Om Hata Pata Pata.
Om Ita Pata Pata Pata. Pata.
Do everyone, and this is going to be was recorded. It's going to be saved and made available on the Kemetic University. Yep.
Dja, just one moment, please. Give me one moment.
Would you say about Sebai, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Heads up.
Were you able to hear the presentation, I hope?
There was static that probably was within the recording, but the whole recording played. Heads up.
Okay, do it. Because I see someone saying they have no. Oh, no, they have audio. Okay, okay. No worries then. So were you not able to hear anything I shared then? So I said Dua for joining, and also the presentation ended a little, my mystic math calculations were, my actual physical math calculations for time were off. So it's actually in a good way that it ended a little earlier. I thought it went longer. But there's something I wanted to go back to since I have a few more minutes from the presentation. So let me just pop that up there. I guess I do have it there on the screen. Just let me turn it so I can see the screen. Just wanted to share that word abode, that we use the Aset, not to be differentiated and distinguished from goddess Aset, that the throne that is used as her title, Aset, throne, is also used in words, and that means abode as well. So sometimes you read, like Puraset, and it means like the abode of a set, like the building or the temple of a set. Can be that way as well too. Okay. Uabamunti, I don't know that Sebai today is making an eclipse appearance on here, other than what we've seen. And does anyone have any questions? And Uabsetna, there's one more piece that I want to share that I shared with Uabamunti that I was impressed with last time, and I don't have my notes. And those who want to use this as a scripture, and it was actually quite timely to have Uratem, whose voice in there you heard asking that last, I want to say as a question, the investigations that he had there with Sebai, that as the scripture was inspired to be brought forth, by Ubratem and Ubamunti. So that's why specifically I wanted to use that for this program, and where the consideration of then the question, well, what about per Heru? For that consideration, it's like I recall asking Sebai, a question once, because I could tell that he had presented a presentation and his focus was on one divinity, and sort of the expectation was to talk about another divinity, and so I could tell there was some aspirants didn't quite get it. There felt like a little bit like it wasn't touched because it wasn't about that divinity. It was about the one they were expecting the talk to be about. And so I remember I shared with Sebai, I said, Sebai, I think somehow, there might be an expectation that, that talk you did might have been about this divinity, or more this aspect, emphasize of the divinity than this aspect. And Sebai said, like, pardon me? And a very confused look. And he was just like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, Sebai had no clue in understanding that it could be picked up by aspirants who had attended that talk, that there could be like a difference between that. Like when a scripture says Heru, and you said, but Sebai, the scripture says Heru, not Ra. It's like, he go, pardon me? Like, who is Heru? Who is Ra? They're one and the same. And then there's that. And then there's specific times, I think, where it can become a little bit not confusing, but aspirants can be unsure of themselves, because in another time, another scripture may reference a specific type of aspect of divinity, and then the aspirant may get very general, and then Sebai saying, why are you being so general? Be specific. So sometimes it can feel that way. But I told you that when Sebai and I started out, and our first altar, I think, where we had the students over, we had every statue we had of every Neteru. I'm not saying we had all the statues of all the Neterus, because we probably hadn't collected, but we had a lot of them. And so we set up this altar and we had all the statues there. And to us, it was just like the beauty of the many that is really the one. And then it took me a while to understand this, because then Sebai after that is like, nope, not doing that again. I'm going like, what was the problem? He goes like, it was too much for people. It was too much. And I think maybe even until now, I don't get the full nuance of what he meant when I was preparing this presentation, of what he meant, that it overwhelmed some people, because it was like, you want to think that people have options and choices, but some people having too many options and too many choices can be overwhelming. Different minds are constructed in different ways. So then we went back to small altar, and let's keep it covered. It's only going to come open for part of it. This is the tradition. Let's do it that way. Even that big altar, I think we kept uncovered, but more selective in that way. And so that's the beauty of going back to embracing the beauty of and the dynamic aspect of our henotheistic, panentheistic tradition, is that when one comes into the teachings, so one may have like these kind of monotheistic type of views coming out of different Orthodox traditions, or then we've all grown up hearing that the Kemetic tradition is, polytheistic, all that's gods and goddesses. I remember when a dear family member, turned to me and said, but Karen, you grew up in Christianity. thou shalt have no other idols before me. what? How does that work? And so that is the perspective that many people, have when they see your tradition. That's the perspective they come from. And even people growing up in the Indian tradition, Hindu tradition, that have lots of gods and goddesses, they have idolatrous ways of looking those gods and goddesses also too. They can say like Shiva is the only one, and then they're upset that the Vishnuites, the ones who follow Vishnu, or except are the ones who follow Buddha, and you get into that. So, and that likely occurred in Kemetic tradition also, where you had the worshiping of the divinities as divinities in and of themselves, where it just became a focus on the divinities themselves, and my temple against your temple. I won't say that's not the essence of Kemetic tradition, and that maybe from some of what we've seen, some of the aspects of when it was already in like a very degraded society and not operating in its highest aspect, coming forth from the clergy, the theurgy. So, and that's the focus of a lot of Western scholars or Western, personalities, because that's what resonates with them, because that's what they focus on, when things are in a way that they can relate to. So they don't relate to the pantheistic aspect or the henotheistic aspect, understanding that we could understand in our tradition that there is only one. And yet we can understand that one has many different facets and expressions, and we can use different conceptual frameworks, cosmic energies that we call divinities or neteru, to represent those dynamic aspects to give us a deeper understanding and pathways to the one. So that's the beauty of our tradition. If you understand that, then your inroads can be of specific tutelary divinity, and you can enter any place, or you can enter and embrace and say, oh, I don't know, I just like all of them. That's perfectly fine too, and okay. As long as you're liking all of them is focused on the essence of oneness, because if you like all of them and you want to go here and you want to go there, you're not going to be able to get to a depth of the teachings, because you're going to stay at the superficial levels of each of those divinities. So you learn enough of them to get to a deeper level. And in our day and age, I can't speak for if it was so in ancient times, because in ancient times, we don't have a model, a living model currently for that, right? We are going off of our past lives, and when we were obviously not enlightened, and we had misunderstandings about even what we were seeing, if we did happen to be in Egypt. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been incarnated into this day, time, and age again, right? We would have attained enlightenment then. So we had so are you going there? That was off. And, in terms of Sema, Sema, the union of Heru and Set, back then it was all like the Heru and Set with two heads, that one with unrighteousness and one with righteousness. So we obviously had a one with a little righteousness, but we also had enough unrighteousness in the other head that, we had to come back again. So we can't say what it was like, back then, but we know from the way the scriptures are all put together and how synchronous they are, like you can go to any temple and you're still getting the same teaching. And so we can see that there was a concordance with all of that. And maybe we didn't need to know. Maybe we could stay with one temple back then. I don't know. Sebai can give his share his view of that. But what I do know is that in today's day and age, because we have only just a tip of the iceberg with the scriptures that are there, but they are all saying the same thing. That's why they can lead us to the path of enlightenment, because they are all saying the same thing. But what is helpful to aspirants, I find, is that, and that's why this understanding, this family aspect, this connectedness between them is important, because if you are belonging, and I'm not speaking about anyone here, I'm just speaking in generalities, I may use different temples or different things, speaking about Kemetic temples, but in today's, if you belong to a specific temple or a specific tutelary and you want to save that focus, well, so you pick a set. Well, a set happen to have a child. So you now have to learn about her child, because she felt it was important enough to give birth to a child. So how can you say, I only want a set and not know about Heru? Okay, so now you have to learn about Heru. Well, Heru happens to have a father, and a set happens to have a partner. So that's a czar. well, I don't really want the male, I want the female. Well, you have to, how did, let's take Asar. How did Asar come into incarnation? Okay, that takes you to Ra, that takes you to Nebuchadnezzar, so all of these different divinities, they are informing the same teaching. And what they do is that they broaden your understanding of Nebuchadnezzar, they broaden your understanding of the path to Nebuchadnezzar through these divinities. And if you get to the highest path of a set, you still should learn about Heru, because that scripture will inform these set scriptures. Especially, I see that the way we are today, where, for example, the Temple of Aset Korsa Sivama, I guess currently I have to say used to have, and that used to have, because I don't know if and when he will start it back again. Hopefully he will. It's a very important course, I think. But that course goes into the depths of this idea of a set and how the final end of the enlightenment product looks like. But if you just start there, if you're a student and you just start there, you don't develop devotion necessarily, because in that scripture, metaphorically, a set is trying to kill Ra. I'm just speaking in broad perspectives. It's all metaphoric and there are deeper meanings of it. But I'm just saying, like, that's not, it doesn't seem like a very loving relation, but it's the highest aspect of the devotional pathway. So you have to get insight into that also. But if you only get insight to that and you don't understand about this myth of Asar, Set, and Heru and those relationships, it's not going to feed you what you need to know. If you say you only want to do the Book of the Dead, well, the Book of Dead is presuming that you have a full, thorough, exoteric understanding of the myth of Asar, Aset, and Heru. It presumes that. It's speaking to people who already are in the tradition, have studied it, are very well developed in their metaphysical capacity of understanding of that. So in our time frame, as we try to present the teachings, it's really important for you to also broaden your horizons to understand that you are just studying. If you're, there's a beautiful image of a set, and I don't have it here, so it's probably going to come up in one of the classes. I'd ask Sebai to. It was an image Sebai and I saw when we were, I think it was a Dendera, one of the times, and we took pictures, but our cameras back then were whatever, and there were so many pictures that I don't even know where it is. But it was a picture in Dendera, and it's really up in the high register, and it's so faded. And it was a set and a moon in a boat with sails. And I did ask Sebai, he did find it again this time, and he did take a picture, but I didn't have a chance to, I don't know if he had a chance to find it from all of his images that he took in his archives to find it for me. But if not, we'll present it at a later time. But imagine that, a picture of a moon and a set. And I don't even know if the hieroglyphs will be legible for us to read it, quite honestly, to make out anything. But just the imagery itself of that. What does that say about if you want to be a follower of a set? That your knowledge of a moon should be. What does it say if you want to be a follower of a moon, that your knowledge of a set should be? That they're imaged together in the temple. In many images, they're together in the temple. And I think I showed you last week in that. And yes, when I say a set, I do mean Heru as well. So we have to embrace this dynamic aspect. And really, I'm not saying that you have to follow because once you go down and start studying the myth of all of these different scriptures, then it's like, this is the one. I feel this is the one. And really, you can't change that much. You can, but it's not healthy. Stick to your one and allow what you're gaining to inform. Know that it is informing your own tutelary divinity. It is broadening an aspect. And then now you read the scriptures for your own tutelary, and you will just see it's the same thing. As a matter of fact, if you know the myth of Aset deeply, which has been presented, and it's in the Kemetic, it has been presented at past Anniver conferences. So even if you're not in the course, it's in the book, but really you need to get the lectures that are in Kemetic for that presentation. And yeah, The videos are not that good because we did it ourselves. And they're not the greatest for imagery, but we've been trying to improve year by year, but you will not find the material that's presented there in those presentations, the quality and the depth and the philosophy anywhere else in any purer form. So I do recommend you ignore the, whatever's going on, whatever clicks you're hearing, sounds and things like that. And, because like today, we've always been trying to improve to different mediums, and any medium is the one that serves our needs best right now, our capacity. So all of this to say that open your heart up to the who I am, nuke correctly, and understand that you're always nuking Nebuchadnezzar. And every one of us will nuke our tutelaries, and we're all nuking Nebuchadnezzar. So I will conclude with that, and then I will have Love Sedna say a few words. But before you leave, I want you to close your eyes, take a breath. Well, don't leave, for Love Sedna's about to talk, but before we conclude, sit up straight, take a deep breath, and I want you to hold your tutelary, as in that image I showed you, in your mystic heart. Your tutelary, if it's Amun, if it's a Set, if it's Heru, if it's Net, and nuke, identify with that divinity as your essence and feel it goes to the depths of your being, to your true nature, and breathe into that for a few moments. Now just breathe with only nuke. Just repeat the word nuke, I am, and breathe into the depths of the heart, nuke. Have that be the abode, the asset, the abode in the heart. You can put your hand over your physical heart area if you'd like. As you breathe into that area, nuke. Mind, body, spirit connection, nuke. And then honoring the scripture, nuke Amun Ra, nuke Amun Ra. Setna? What's up? Setna, you're on. Puja is Munti, is Setna available? Wasn't sure. If not, Munti, if you want to come on and close this out. Here's a question. Oh, Uja, oh, there you are. What are astral and causal work examples? Bastu Baket, didn't we just cover this in a class?
Uja Sibaja, Ni, I believe we had, so it should be in the recordings. And also, I want to say it's also in the where you just mentioned that Sejaman Mompet talked about this as well. So that can be referred to on Kemet TV. Those are accessible if you are a member of this Kemet TV at this Sage Amenemopet series.
Okay, I will try to research or respond to you directly or share in the general temple Shemsetepti. It's a much vaster topic than I could go into at this time since I have a hard stop in about 6 minutes. So reach out to me again if I do not respond within the next 2 weeks. Reach out again. And if in the meantime, Bastu Baket and I or Andrew Sibama can get you the specific references, not you, but everyone here, the specific references where it's addressed more detailed, we will reach out and let you know. Well, so we'll follow up with you one way or the other. Okay, do ahead. Oops, Sadna? Do you have camera or no?
The camera is gonna take away my my bandwidth.
Well, just turn the camera on for a moment, show yourself, and then you can take it back off. Also, there's an echo. I don't know if you have two, if you have a phone and computer or something's echoing. Go ahead, oops, Edna, if you want to give us a concluding talk, closing, and close us out with a chant to Amun Ra, that would be appreciated. If you're speaking web Sedna, we cannot hear you.
Uja.
Okay,
Can you hear me now? Okay,
me,
so.
hear you.
Yes, I'd like to thank, first of all, Sebaja for coming for the second time around to share these wonderful teachings on the anniversaries of poor Amun and poor Heru. We are gracious for her presence, and I hope everyone participating had a wonderful insights into the presentation of the two principles or divinities coming together as Amun Ra in the teachings. We would like to close out with that affirmation. And so if you can sit with your back straight, allowing the abdomen to expand as you inhale, allow to contract back towards the spine. As you exhale, breathing in deeply and rhythmically, shoulders over the hips. Contemplating on what we just heard. If you would like to establish an image of Amun Ra in your purview. We'll be calling response in the same tone and in the same frequency. Om Hotep, 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 Hotep. Om peace, 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 peace. Hotep,
What's up?
to everyone.
Do it. If anyone has any further questions, you're welcome to email it to me. And Shamsatepti, if you can email the question to me, put in the subject question from the anniversary talk in the subject line. And that way it'll be a reminder to me to further. If anybody has any other questions, you can just also email. Just put question for the anniversary in the subject line, so it'll make it easier to sort. Peace and blessings all. That's it. Uba Munti, anything else to say before we sign off?
No, just want to say do for putting this together and this presentation and giving us a deeper perspective of Amun Ra and also Heru. So we appreciate your services, your divine services. Hotep.
Hotep. Do it to everyone. Peace and blessings.